Hello everyone, it's Marta here. Welcome back. If I'm sounding overly excited, it's just because I have this absolutely mind-blowing technique for you today. My friends, I reach to the deepest part of my drawer with the embossing powders and I bring out the embossing which then been lying there for years unused, and look on that. I don't know if the camera is showing it, but this embossing powder is 22 years old. It's 2002. I don't believe in that. Now here I also have a couple of the distress oxide ink, but I'm just gonna be creating a couple of the background as the base for my technique. So stay tuned, my friends, if you want to learn it. This is so simple and so easy. Now I only have one more favor to ask from you, my friends. Please share this video, click the share button, send it to your friends or post it on your Facebook, because this is absolutely fabulous technique for everyone. If you own the embossing powders, if you've got the iron, because that's another thing we gonna need, this is for you. Now sometimes it's happened from time to time that we do have those embossing powders which we buy, and then you never really use it much, so this is gonna be a perfect technique for it. However, before I'm gonna jump into the technique, I am creating a couple of the pieces of the smooshed technique, like background, just so I could have some interesting backgrounds underneath. You can also use the design papers or colored cardstock if you like. It's entirely up to you. I just prefer a handmade background because they do have that interesting texture and they're kind of like one of a kind. So here I placed the piece of the foil packaging, I add couple of the ink colors, and then I just smoosh it. Not really any rhyme and reason here, it's just a little bit drop of the color. Now one thing, I don't press with my hand. If I'll do the smooshing technique, I do prefer to either use the brayer or leave it be, like just touch the foil and leave it for a couple seconds. I never go with my finger because sometimes you can leave the fingernail marks on the card, and that's just something I don't like. So just to let you know, be aware that if you press too hardly with your fingernails, that could leave the mark. Here I add a couple of splashes of the water on my mat, and then thanks to that I was able to adhere this background piece, just stick it to the mat, and that will help it to stay flat once it's drying. This time I'm going with the combination of the yellowish and velvet. That's what's the color? It's like a purpley. Oh, I have to check. I forgot. I'm absolutely like, where is that ink? Oh, of course. Oh, Victorian velvet. I forgot the name. So anyway, that's the fossilite amber and the Victorian velvet, just a little bit of the yellow and kind of like a purplish color. And again, once I smoosh the ink on the paper, I am just adding it flat to my mat and just let it dry. That will really help it out to stay flat. Now this is not the watercolor paper. It would be probably looking better with the watercolor paper, but I have this kind of a funny coated paper from the BM. For the friends who watch my channel, you do know I've bought few packets of the paper and I don't really like it, but I've decided to give it a chance here and just use it. And I'm actually positively surprised because this paper, thanks to the top layer being kind of coated, it's actually lifting the distress oxide ink very well. So if you put the layer of the distress oxide and then you sprinkle it with the water, you can almost entirely lift the color and leave the white spots. So I really like that one. For the fourth and last piece of the paper, I just use a brayer and I randomly go over it with a little bit of the green. I believe that's peeled paint. And then I'm just gonna add the self patina. And I was using my brayer with something else and I just left it dry. So that's why it's a little bit bluish color. But it doesn't really matter. It's just, it's just to add the distress technique. So I'm okay if it's messy. And here, this is what I was telling you about. I add couple of the droplets with the or using my own hand, and then when I press with the kitchen towel, it's just lift the color so beautifully. And I actually, for the very first time, I like this paper really well. So here you can see the places I'm dabbing is just leaving the white spots, so it's a very good splattery effect for me. I really like it. Now once my paper will be drying, here you can see a little bit close up, I'm gonna be going to the main point of this card, and here I just add a little bit more color to one of the papers because I thought it's gonna be looking a little bit pale. And then before I will entirely put them back, I just had a little extra drop of the color on the foil, so I've decided to use it here on this piece. So that's all my 4 backgrounds, and then they will be waiting for me once I'm gonna be working on the embossing technique. So just to let you know, my friends, this is actually the technique I've been familiar with for a very long time. I think like 2 years ago, I had the commission for a Creative Essential series. This is the UK magazine kits, which are coming under the Craft Stash. And one of the editors asked me to actually create couple of the commission work for the one of the magazines using the embossing pouncing technique. So this is the first time I heard this name, and I don't even know why I haven't made the video back then about this, because it's fabulous technique. Here I also have this like a wooden board which I've bought in the Hobbycraft, and this was supposed to be the top part for my IKEA Rasgok on this like a shelf on a wheel, but it's actually not matching. I do believe that this is matching the one which is produced by the Hobbycraft. They do have their own like a little like, you know, cartwheel shelf, but it's slightly different from the IKEA. So the board was lying, but then I thought I need something to protect my desk, so that's what I'm using it. Anyway, going back to the technique, this is the technique I believe that was invented by Marion. Oh my gosh, what's the name? Marion Emberson, sorry. I was trying to remind myself the name of this super talented crafter. She does a lot of the things with the embossing powder. So you may, if you haven't known her channel before, I'll leave it name down below in the description area. So go there, because you're gonna find out so many good tips there that I really encourage you to try. Now here I am taking a little piece of the baking paper, like this is just a kitchen baking paper, and then I am adding the lots of different embossing powder, and I'm just going wild. Like there's no any particular you know, order or anything. It's just a little drop of this and that, and it's really I'm not even sure where I'm going with it. I'm only basing my combination, trying to stay in the same stage as, you know, the background papers, something similar. Anyway, what was the embossing pouncing technique Marion was doing was she was using her heat gun tool, and she was just kind of heating and pouncing over this pile of the embossing powder. I've tried to do that same, but I've kind of went too much with it, and I've actually destroyed my heat gun tool. So the cover up, this plastic cover which was on the top, got a little bit melt and destroy, and the heat tool is still working perfectly. It's just the cover, this plastic cover got you know, melt and destroy. But this time I've decided to use up the iron, because you can do it either way. You can do it with the iron or you can do it with heat tool. However, the iron will give you the better result, because it will melt the pieces like straight away, and it's way more heat, and you kind of get like a better melting over the powder. This is my overall like opinion based upon my experience, but you can try both. However, if you're using the heat gun tool, please be careful and do not pounce too much, too heavily, because you can destroy it. So for the first time, I add a drop of the embossing powder in between the paper, and then I left it to kind of cool down, because if you try to separate it once it's hot, you will end up having 2 pieces at once. Here I've decided to go with different thing. that I'm gonna add it directly to the paper. And to be fair, this was the one which I didn't like as much. However, and I'm gonna invite you to the part 2 of this video, because today we're just gonna be creating the background, and on my next video, which probably will be coming tomorrow, I will show you how I turn this paper into beautiful cards. And I must tell you, this card, the paper which I've made, I didn't really like. However, once I turn it into the card, this is one of my favorite cards from the all 4 of them I've made out of this technique. So stay tuned. I hope you're gonna join me for the next video tomorrow. And if you're new, if you haven't been following me, please consider leaving the subscription and click the notification bell. That way you'll be notified anytime I post a new video, so you're not gonna be missing that. So again, I am pressing with the iron, and I keep mine on the highest setting, number 3, and this is just working. Like couple time I pass it through and it was just fine. Now this time I've decided to emboss the paper along with the embossing folder, and I must tell you, this was a little bit disaster because it got all crinkle. However, the embossing piece was imprinted, like the embossing folder design was imprinted on the embossing powder, so you could clearly see the design here. But I've decided to go with different thing for the one of my next pieces. So here I have this thin layer which was left over from the one which I just passed through with the embossing powder, but I put it aside. And here is the one, and I'm sorry it's a little bit chaotic, but I've just tried to do a few things at once here, so that's why I'm switching back and forth in between the papers. So here I have this very thick layer which was left to cool down, and once I open up the baking paper, the whole piece was coming up as one part, so that's why this layer is thicker, when on the other one I just separated half. If you open up your baking paper once it's still hot, the embossing powder, it will just, you know, separate into thinner layers. So if you want your layer to be thicker, just leave it till cool down, and that way you can take it off. And this time I did the opposite. First I embossed the paper through the embossing folder, and then I placed this layer of the melt embossing powders on top of it. And I am just using my heat gun tool just to slightly melt it and kind of embed it on the embossed paper. And oh my gosh, this is absolutely fabulous. And this piece is also one of my favorite. I actually must tell you that I love them all. They all came up so unique, and it's just wow effect instantly. Even though it hasn't been turned into the card yet, it's just mind-blowing. Like if you're gonna look on the paper itself, whoever will receive that card made with this paper, and especially if they're a crafter, they'll be like, oh wow, this is like, how did you do that? This is incredible. I just love the effect. I also add a little bit more sprinkling with the gold, and here you can see this amazing result, because I thought it may just need a little bit more shiny. So I absolutely love it, and this piece by now, by far, it's one of my favorites. And here I'm gonna be working on the background number 3. This time I bring my paper over next to this paper. I'm putting the embossing powders because I want to be kind of inspired by the color look on this background. So I'm trying to recreate the mixture of the color which I have here. And at first I add a little bit of the white and kind of like a mustard one. I add a teeny tiny drop of the red, kind of like a rosy one. A couple of the sprinkles, and then I went back to my drawer to bring more of the pinkish and yellow color tones, just so I could kind of recreate the same look with my embossing powders. And if you look, I can see now on the camera, it looks like I'm really adding a lot of the powders here, but to be fair, it doesn't really take as much as as you may think of. And especially for those of you crafty friends who are having a little bit of the embossing powders, I personally can tell you that I have so many powders that I could probably emboss like sentiments and images for the next several years without buying any more. So this technique is actually so fabulous that it finally will help me to get rid of the powders which I don't really maybe I would not say I don't like, but this is not my super vibe, the colors. So having this technique and being able to create that fabulous, like kind of like a mixed media effect on the card, that's really super fun. And I'm pretty much sure that for this Christmas year I'm gonna be creating all sorts of like shiny gold and silver splatters on the card because I absolutely love it. Here is the second part, this thin layer of the melted powders. That's the layer where I was separating the hot powder, like it's split into halves. One of them went on the paper which I embossed with the powder on its own. Like I believe that was the first paper I was creating, and then this is the second part. And once I place it on the card, and there's two ways you can heat it up. If you blow your air under the angle, it will kind of flatten up. But if you put your heat gun tool like 90 degrees over and blow straight down on the embossing powder, it will just kind of melt and just create a nice spread. It almost reminds me the effect if you work with the alcohol inks and you add this like liquid solution to help the inks spread, and it will create the bubbles. So this is the effect you can achieve here. And here is the last piece where I have this layer. This is also a thicker layer, like same with the green color one, and this time I just stir it and I am adhering it. And again, if you will blow your air directly up to this little melt embossing powder pieces, they're gonna be creating this kind of like a bubble effect, and it's absolutely fabulous. Imagine yourself having this like a darker cardstock and then just put a layer of the silver one or something, and then add couple of the stamped images or something. It's fabulous. I absolutely love it, and I cannot believe that 2 years ago I was creating commission and I never ever film it. I had a plan, but then I must have forgot somehow. But anyway, that would be my backgrounds. I'm gonna be coming back to show you what you can do with this type of the background and how to turn them into a lovely card. And I hope you will join me there. Please don't forget to give a like, to say hi in the comment, let me know where are you watching from. And of course, just want to invite you all to join me on a Sunday, because Sunday night evening in Poland, 8 o'clock in UK, or I believe that's 3 o'clock in the United States, I'm gonna have the live classes. The link to the live classes is down below in the description area as well. And that will be me for today. I will be coming back tomorrow with ideas on making these lovely papers into the cards. And in meantime, I'm just saying bye-bye to you. Wish you all a fabulous day. Stay blessed, my friends. Thank you so much once again for watching, for sharing, and commenting. I do love reading your comments, and I absolutely enjoy them every single time. I know I have a pile of the comments to catch up and write back the answers to you, so I'll be doing it just now. Stay blessed once again, and bye bye.